Hello, dear listeners, and welcome again to another episode of Field Notes, the weekly podcast from the Hindu Business Line on all things agribusiness. I'm your host, T.R. Vivek. In today's episode, we will be talking about sericulture, or the business of producing silk fiber from silkworms. You will remember from school lessons that the domestic silk moth or Bombyx mori feeds almost entirely on mulberry leaves. After its leaf chomping phase as a larva, it encloses itself in a cocoon of silk produced by its salivary glands. India's roughly $8 billion silk industry has taken a beating. Its quality has dropped, and Chinese and Vietnamese silk now have a better reputation. Yet, it is too important to be allowed to decay. India is the second largest producer and the largest consumer of silk. There are nearly 45 lakh farmers who depend on sericulture. To discuss the issues around Indian sericulture, we have on Field Notes Mayank Tiwari, the CEO and co-founder of Resha Mandi. Resha Mandi is a Bangalore-based agri-tech that claims to be digitizing India's silk supply chains by using tech interventions from the farmer to the consumer end. It works with thousands of farmers to improve the quality of silk and links them up with the textile industry. Mayank is a graduate of the National Institute of Fashion Technology and has worked in the e-commerce and fashion retail sectors. Hello Mayank, how are you?
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, Vivek. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm very fine. Mayank, I believe the Indian silk industry has been in a bit of a crisis of sorts in recent years. Could you tell us what's been happening in the Indian silk industry?
From our perspective, what I see is that mulberry under plantation has been growing in India for the last 5 years. Indian silk industry got dominated by the Chinese yarn that we were imported. And what we were primarily doing with that imported yarn was to manufacture fabric for export consumption. Whatever India produces, we primarily consume ourselves. We are the number one consumer of silk and number two producer of silk. However, people have this misconception saying that Chinese silk is better than our silk. The tensile strength of Chinese silk was the only agenda item there as to why Chinese silk was better. But one thing that happens with Chinese silk is its the brittleness comes through when it ages. So a Kanjivaram sari will start cracking after a few years because the Chinese silk was used there. Now, Indian silk has a very different property from there. A, it's more lustrous than the Chinese silk. B, it has a larger tensile strength and the brittleness, of course, goes out. What today is happening in India is the farmers have started understanding that they need to technologically be able to produce this crop because this crop has various nuances, if specifically around temperature, humidity, and leaf controls, and then accordingly be able to reap the benefits of the technology advancement. While the government has been quite supportive of the silk industry as such, they have come up with Silk Samagra scheme. Even the local government in Karnataka and Andhra is trying to support the farmers and the reeling community. But there is a larger penetration that is still pending. Why that happens is primarily because the farmers don't have the accessibility to the research that is already conducted by Central Silk Board or CSTRI, right? They continue to do the research, but the propagation takes time because of various factors, and sometimes it's also to do with the factor as to how the central government versus state government, because this is also a subject of both the governments. The marketing of it is with the state government, while the production and the research is with the central government. So it takes time for the penetration of the technology to happen. But overall, silk industry in India right now should be looking at the global market because there is an anti-China sentiment out there. European market and US market is looking towards India to be able to produce the right quality of silk and be able to fulfill the orders that they have right now. So that's where we are.
A lot of the weavers themselves seem to prefer imported Chinese silk. Why is that? In my conversations with some of them, they seem to have a bias towards keeping aside the geopolitical sentiments. In terms of pure business, that still seems to have a lot of cachet.
Okay, so just talk about the business for a while. Today's Chinese yarn is costing you anywhere close to $65, while Indian yarn will cost you anywhere close to $40, $45. Now, tell me where is the business mindset there? The mindset was created primarily by the few cartels of the silk traders, primarily the yarn traders, because nobody has the accessibility directly to reach out to the reeling units. Because reeling units are primarily pocketed in Ramnagar, Sidlagatta. These are taluka based concentrations. And for a Vanarasi weaver who requires only 200 kgs of a yarn on a monthly basis, for him to get a direct access, the scale of economies does not function. So even for the reelers. Hence, both of them depend on a trader, and then they try and tell them that the Chinese quality is better, Indian quality isn't better. But is it really so? Have the reelers really understood what they're producing? Or the viewers have really understood as to what are they consuming? Because
For the
most of the
benefit of
time, what
our listeners, Mike, who would be the reelers? What do they do?
I'll give you a context of the silk supply chain. So it starts
Sure.
from egg production. It's almost like the butterfly's life cycle, right? It starts from egg production, goes to somebody called a chaki rearing farm, which basically hatches these eggs and make larvas. Larvas are then passed on to the farmer who will, on a 21-day cycle, feed the mulberry leaves and make the cocoons. These cocoons are then sent over for reeling. Now, reeling units in India are typically of three types. But what they primarily do is they boil the cocoon, they remove the protein content, and then start drawing out the yarn. So these are the people who are drawing out the yarn, and then yarn is a commodity that you can store for a longer period of time. Cocoon requires the same day transport to happen. Otherwise, the cocoon is emitting CO2 and your gunny bags will start having higher temperatures. And of course, you can't keep it for very long until you are stifling the cocoon, right? So that's what the reeling community does. Once the yarn is produced, it has to go to the weaving clusters. Weaving clusters will produce either the saris or the fabrics or whatever you see out there of silk. And that is what is sent out to the retailers and finally to our consumers. So that is the entire landscape of silk supply chain.
Mike, it is said that the quality at the farm gate pretty much decides the quality of the fabric as far as silk is concerned. Why is that? And is that true?
It is very, very true. It's much more true in the sense that the quality is actually defined at the chalky side itself. Once the silkworm is hatched out of the egg and becoming the larva, if there is no early detection of disease, which most of the chalkies forget to do, that is where it gets defined. Then, of course, in our farming practice, we define more parameters to it in the sense if there is not a right temperature, humidity control, or if the leaf has a pesticide residue, or worm has not fed the right quality of leaf. It may have lesser moisture or a higher moisture. And if it has a lesser moisture, because they're taking their water intake directly from the leaves, right? So it becomes important that you have a certain percentage of moisture in the leaf. Otherwise, the silkworm will not grow properly and then die eventually in the process.
Mhm.
And similarly, if you have higher moisture content, then they will bloat up and die. So there is a chance of crop failure there, which is
Mhm.
rampant. You go to Andhra Pradesh, you will realize that the crop failure ratio is more than 60%
Mhm.
sometimes in few of the farms. While the farmers that we work with in Bangalore and nearby areas in Karnataka, at least these guys are a little bit mature. They've been doing this for quite some time. So their effective percentage is around 30-35%. But it's still too much, right? The Chinese have already established themselves with a process where they're able to do 90%
Mhm.
production. Right, so that's where the difference lies. Now, will Kanjivaram sarees not get determined at the farming level? Yes, because if the silkworm stop producing the saliva or the glands stop producing it because there is not enough moisture content that they have fed on for the last 15-20 days, at that point in time you will have a breakage in the thread. That breakage will continue to exist in the reeling machines and then of course in the weaving clusters as well. Finally, when the Kanjivaram sari comes to you, it has to be calmed and that knot has to be not visible to you. But it does happen.
Mike, Resha Mandi says that it is digitizing India's silk supply chain. And the problems that you mentioned about quality being determined at the farm gate. Tell us about your work in creating this ecosystem of quality as far as silk is concerned.
Sure. So Resha Mandi is primarily doing two things with any leg of the silk supply chain. We don't work with the egg production units. We work with the Chaki rearing centers where the Central Silk Board already has a certain bit of SOP defined as to what Chakis have to follow to produce the right quality of the silkworm. So we work with them to identify what are these SOPs and then make sure that the Chakis who are working with us and they are our input providers are providing the right quality. We are trying to define AIML to do early detection of disease so that we can pass on the technology benefit directly in the hands of the Chaki guys as well as onto the hands of the farmers. Now, once we have established that and we have supplied it to them, the right quality, we do two things at the farm level. One, we supply them a IoT device at their mulberry plantation itself, which basically helps them understand when to irrigate, when not to irrigate, and also what is their carbon content looking like of the soil, because that would define what would be the corresponding protein percentage that they will have on their leaves. And then through satellite image, we try and understand whether the yield has grown or not grown. Our early result shows us that we've been able to improve it by 30% for now. While we continue to experiment this further, and there will be more research papers that we will publish. The second bit of the IoT device that we have is in the rearing shed itself. Now, normally what happens is everybody understands agriculture as to be in the open field, while sericulture is a domain where you will have an open field of mulberry, which will get cut eventually to be fed to the silkworm, and silkworms are inside a closed room which will have windows and it has to be airy enough. So now we have the rearing shed IoT, which basically does four parameters check. One is what is the air quality looking like. Second, what is the lux factor, which is the light. And third is the temperature. And fourth is the humidity. We basically try and identify, we have a set parameters across the life cycle of the silkworm as to what they need to have to be able to rear it properly. And then finally get the right quality of cocoon, which can eventually trade at a higher price. So idea there is that we do a KYC with the farmer to understand what are the tools that are available. And if they don't have tools very handy with them, then we accordingly change our advisory. There are different ways as to how we work with it. And we also have an agronomy team which gets an escalation if at all there is a farmer who's not following the advice. And then we make sure that they move towards the right direction in terms of maintaining the temperature and humidity at least.
So you are able to monitor even if a farmer is not following the prescribed SOPs, you are able to detect it through technology and then, if needed, intervene.
Yes, we are. And once the cocoon is ready, we basically do a Rendata test, which basically defines as to how many kgs of cocoon would be needed to make 1 kg of yarn. The lesser the number, the higher the price. This is a physical check that was conducted even in Ramnagar, but only 10% of the lot was able to get checked on a daily basis, primarily because the testing lab has only 2-3 people who are doing these tests, and Ramnagar gets 40 tons on a daily basis. So it's humanly not possible to do it. Now I applied for a provisional patent where we are through image recognition itself, we'll be able to determine exactly what the Rendata of the cocoon is. And we're passing on that technology onto our app directly so that the farmers themselves will be at their farm gate, just do a scan and understand what the quality that they have produced, and then accordingly the pricing. And they can accept the price and we can move forward from there.
How many farmers currently do you work with and how do you earn money?
Right. We currently work with around 14,000 plus farmers across Karnataka. We just recently started a foray into Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, and Maharashtra. And how do we make money is when we supply the inputs to the farmer, there is a certain bit of commission that we take. Basically, these are our handling charges and of the input. Second is when the cocoon gets transported to the reelers, of course, there is a commission that we partake and we handle the logistics ourselves. We take it on our account. Then, once the yarn is ready with the reelers, we do a quality test of that yarn before it gets supplied to the weavers, and there is a commission percentage that we take there as well. And once the fabric or the sari is ready and we are supplying that to the retailer, that's again where we make the money.
Do you buy back the entire lot of yarn that comes out of your farmers, or do you link them up with retailers and manufacturers?
No, so basically it's about a buyback guarantee that we are able to offer to the farmers whosoever is onto our ecosystem when they are taking because it's a free trade market, right? They can choose to just take input from us and then go and sell it in Ramnagar market as well. But if they do want to come back to our ecosystem, we are happy to do a cross check on the rent data test and accordingly price it out and then work with them. Similarly, at the reelers side as well, there are reelers who continue to purchase cocoon from us, but they don't really supply yarns, while there are reelers who follow our advices. We backfill the order from the weaving clusters to them directly, and then they are working on producing the yarns as well for us of the right quality.
Has there been any difference in terms of what the farmers can earn and in terms of the quality of yarn that they've been producing?
So, from the quality standpoint, the cocoon that has our input and our IoT interventions has affinity towards increasing the overall revenue of the farmer by approximately 20%.
Mhm.
While from the reeling community as well, they are not only excited, but these are initial results that have come out when we have supplied them the IoT led intervention based cocoon. They have been able to get to a 4A grade silk yarn directly on a multi end unit instead of on a automatic reeling plant, which was rare, which didn't happen earlier.
And in terms of quality, is the yarn now longer better and
Yeah,
comparable to imports?
Chinese yarn, so to say, is a 4A, 5A grade yarn. India does produce 4A
What does
grade.
that
There
mean,
are
4A or 5A?
automatic reeling units.
Could you explain that? Or what does 4A or 5A?
Yeah, sure. So basically, the grading of the yarn start from a 1A grade and goes up to a 6A, 7A grade. This is the higher the grade, the better the yarn in terms of its finesse and in terms of its smoothness. There are also the other two factors that you need to consider is what is the denier that you're looking for, which basically defines what is the finesse of the yarn that you're looking to input into your, looms. So if you're looking for a 2022 denier, then that will be a finer yarn than a 4044 and things like that. Apart from that, you need to also check for a CV ratio, which is basically what is the smoothness of the yarn. The better the smoothness of the yarn, the better it is for the weavers, primarily because the thread will never break while it is running on the loom. Because otherwise, the weavers will have to tie the knot again and again. You'll have knotted fabric coming out. So the
Mhm.
higher the CV ratio, the lesser affinity at the weaving cluster. So all these factors put together is what will define a yarn's quality. Now, what we have visualized is when we went to Banaras, when we were able to show them the yarns, most of the viewers have not only changed their course of action from taking the Chinese yarn, but now working with the Indian yarn. We have also shown it to the Central Silk Board guys and other people who know the quality of the yarn. We get it tested every time when we do a trade anyway. So we know that it is comparable to what is coming out from China as well.
Mike, how did you zero in on silk? The agri sector, it is not perhaps the largest segment. Tell us how you chose this and how you got into this part of the trade.
Like you said, Vivek, I am a NIFT Mumbai graduate. So when I started my career, I started with a high fashion store where we were working a lot on silk, and I was basically handling the domestic operations where I was doing the sourcing, production. So I knew what goes into the silk fabric, right, as to what qualities gets produced and otherwise. Then I had worked on my own setup, which was Next Steps Research and Development, which was primarily a services company, but we were primarily working on grassroots level problems, working with the weavers and artisans across India, trying to give them platform to work with the retailers directly. At that point in time, also I've worked with these weaving clusters of cotton, weaving clusters in silk, and hence the affinity towards the natural fiber has always been there. So when I was looking to start something of my own after having 15, 16 years of experience, the idea was that let's stay put at the supply chain, pick up a supply chain and try and solve for it. Second, it has to have a rural connect or an agri connect, and that is where natural fibers came into foray, because almost all the natural fibers have the agriculture of the farmers at the back end who needs to get digitized, who needs to get organized, and then you'll be able to put that into perspective and have better qualities, transparencies come out, which is what the international buyers are also looking for. Now, how we chose to start with silk was primarily to do with the factor that if I would have started with cotton, there are already traditional players that are existing, and as an entrepreneur you're looking for a green field, and I found my green field in silk because India's silk segment is completely unorganized. There are only far and few players in between, and these players are also not backward or forward integrated. So they are working on one leg of the supply chain. So there could be a Chamundi Silks and a Himmat Singh which are doing great job at the textile mill side, while you have a Hasib working on the reeling side. But you will never find somebody trying to backward integrate like Aditya Birla on cotton, right? So there was nothing of that sort existing, and we said, okay, we can go full stack here. Looks to be a lucrative market. $8 billion is what you already told. From our bottoms up calculation, looks like India should be doing anywhere close to $75 billion worth of trade, and that's the capability India has. We are not even utilizing 1/10 of it right now.
And what has prevented this backward integration in silk?
What happens is when you look at the socio-economic challenges across India and the religious factors, so people don't trust each other. The reeler will never trust the farmer will never trust the reeler saying, okay, listen, my quality is this, and then they will haggle onto it. And hence, the state government came up with the Ramnagar market and Sidlagatta market, and all these markets came up, right? But now India has moved towards digitization. Everybody has technology in their hand, and we saw there was an opportunity where people don't have to really venture out of their houses, and we can provide them the layer of trust through the technology. So that's what we see.
Through technology, is it that these two communities which didn't trust each other enough, they now can be invisible? They need not know who they are dealing with. Is that the role that technology plays?
Sometimes, yes. So sometimes, if you don't know your buyer and you're trusting a platform, you're trusting a company which is a third party, has no relation to the reeling community, apart from selling them the cocoon which is getting procured at Haveri or a Heriur. And finally, the farmers does not even have to bother going to Ramnagar 300, 400 kilometers away to stay in a inhuman condition in a Ramnagar market and then haggle with a reeler in the morning while the bidding is going on. All that factors also constitute as to why a technology platform becomes much more predominant and why people are ready to adopt towards the technology.
Mine, can Resha Mandi have applications in other sectors of agriculture as well? Or this is purpose built for silk?
No, so we are Resha Mandi primarily because we have a natural fiber bent in mind. Resha means fiber. So idea has always been that yes, there will be a diversification later on. So the technology that we have built is completely scalable to other natural fibers as well. So soon we'll start foraying into cotton as well, where we are trying to build up top-down thesis and see as to what the retailers are demanding, what the international buyers are demanding, and can we create that supply leg out of India.
Mike, thank you very much for joining us and thank you for your great insights.